Yeah, it's on Zoom, but nobody does. Yeah.
About 7 places in Ohio. Set aside services.
What?
I just thought it was hot, it's close to here. It's like, well, I can take care of it.
Yes.
Oh, it just kicked in.
Oh, I hear it, yeah, okay.
Plus Middle Ages women should never be.
I don't think I know.
Hey, Diane. I'll beat you halfway.
All right, thank you. I don't know if that's half, but thank you. All right, have a discussion with yourself.
Well, welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. We are recording because a couple people who couldn't be here today wanted us to do that. So just know that anything you say will be identified with you. Thank you for doing this. I've been interested in trying to do this for a church setting for a while and have never had the chance to do it. I want to say first that I am no expert on this. I took in Seattle 3 2-day classes on the Enneagram. And one of them was specifically for clinicians, for using it in clinical practice. So for those of you, how many of you have done something with the Enneagram over the years? Wow, okay, so four of you. Yeah, so anything you want to add, anything you'd like to challenge that I say that doesn't fit with what you've learned or experienced, I am not bashful at all about being corrected. But the reason I thought this would be helpful is, we all know not just the last 2 years, but the last at least 6 years have been times of tremendous challenge, and we have had a lot called out of us. And maybe like me, you have found yourself responding to world events or to family events, to personal things, going, wow, why am I so upset about this? Or why am I been feeling so angry? Or why have I been feeling so lost? So I think that in especially challenging times, yes. Oh, you're saying.
Your email says Zoom link in the subject, but there's not actually a Zoom link anywhere.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry to interrupt, but
It's set.
Yeah,
Oh dear.
so
Yeah.
can I skip it this time? Is that what you're thinking?
Why don't we?
get it to you real fast.
Yes, there is a way.
Dang
it. So I started this, but I didn't send, because it's the same link that we've always had, but that doesn't help people. So go to this, copy of hunt, you just saw it. I am gonna type 0. Copy invitation. Let me just resend it quickly to. Well, that's kind of not your job. That's kind of my job.
That's my motto. Technology is great until it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got into it using the link from the non-link thing, so if I just send that out to everybody.
I just sent it to everybody on the mailing list. Yeah, Don left, that's no issue. Correct. Full screen here. Here is the handout. Goes to. Yeah. Yeah, how ironic. We're just talking about the importance of developing a deeper sense of self-understanding to try to understand why we might respond the way we do to life events. The chatter that goes on in our head, the messages we give ourselves, to the extent that we find ourselves getting stuck in some similar ways, or find ourselves going, why did I do that? Why did I say that? What's going on? And so I think this can be really helpful in something like that. Judith was asking about the Myers-Briggs. And I know as Al comes in, Al is a vocational counselor, and the Myers-Briggs is something that is extremely helpful in a lot of ways, but it also helps us in terms of looking at what work might be good, what work might be challenging for someone with this particular type. The Enneagram is really not something that is that really helps us figure out particular vocation, I don't think, at least. It's really more of a personal self-understanding and for relationships. So relationships at work, it can be very helpful to sort of look at why do I always have tensions with this colleague? Or why, when my partner and I are dealing with particular issues, why do we get so stuck? There are a lot of really good, helpful, interesting type indicators, personality tests. So this is one that I have found, like I said, I have found really helpful personally, and to understand more who I am, and to look back on my life and make sense of ways that things I was not conscious of, that I simply found myself, ways of living I found myself engaged in, ways I responded. So let's just start. And I thought one thing that would be helpful at the end, I'm going to give you something to take home that is hopefully fairly straightforward way to try to figure out what your type is. And what I will ask is, after I send this out to you, if between now and next Sunday, you can email me back and tell me what your letters are on this. I'll pass this out. I'll explain to you how this will work. Then I can bring to you the description of the type that you have found yourself to be. There is also a possibility that you might say, wow, there are 2 or even 3 that really resonate. Tell me what your first, second, and third choices are. And then I will get to you all 3 of those descriptions. And then as you look more closely at the description, you might find one that fits more with who you are. So today we won't be looking at your particular type. We'll read through a little bit about what the Enneagram is, and then we'll look at the description of a particular type, just so in detail, so we can really kind of see the kinds of information that this might be able to convey, things you might be able to try to understand in it. So someone would just want to read these first 2 paragraphs on this on the handout.
I can.
Okay, thank you, Judy.
Maybe. One of the many books on the Enneagram describes it in this way. The Enneagram is a personality system that describes 9 distinct and fundamentally different patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. Each of the 9 patterns is based on a particular filter we've created over time to make sense of how the world works and how we can have our needs met. This filter determines what we pay attention to and how we direct our energy. Under each of these 9 patterns is a basic belief about what we need to survive and to feel happy. Each of us has developed one of these 9 patterns to protect a specific aspect of ourself that felt threatened as our personality was developing. As we discover an Enneagram personality type, we will discover more about our original whole self. We will also understand more about the unconscious motivation from which each of us operates. Discovering these things about ourselves can help us learn how to bring positive change into our lives. It can help change the way we relate to others, as well as give us a greater understanding of how and why we respond to the world in the ways we do. This gives us the ability to choose to respond to the world in new ways that can bring us more freedom and joy. Do I go on?
No, you're good. You're good. This will hopefully become clearer as we look more in depth at the example that I have here. But in general, one thing that I think this is really helpful about is if we're not conscious of something, then it's very hard to change. If I am not aware about what triggers me, if I'm not aware of what I really fear, then when that fear gets cracked open in some way, I will not be able to step back and go, oh, this is that fear that sort of strikes at the core of who I am. And that is why I go crazy when that fear gets stirred up. Once we become conscious of some of these things, then we can go, I am really vulnerable to getting triggered in this particular way. And so when this happens, I can now go, not beat myself up and go, gosh, Dave, you're such an idiot. Why are you reacting, in such an exaggerated way to this? No, there's a reason that we respond the ways we do. That doesn't mean that we can just go do it. I mean, how many times on a Myers-Briggs, oh, I'm just being my J, as if that justifies what we do, instead of saying, no, I got to take responsibility for some of these attributes, but because once I'm aware of them, then I can go, yeah, okay. So so you had a question, then you had a question. Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious I was just looking at the second paragraph at the beginning when it talked about it as our personality is developing. Is that like a nature versus nurture, or is it a combination? Because I do feel like some people just are born with certain personality traits, but some of it's a result of how you're brought up and the discrimination that you. So is it a little bit everything?
It's both. But it really, the important thing in this one is to realize that the world, there are parts of you'll hear words like essential or true self or essence. Those are common phrases in Enneagram. And one core piece of this is that each of us has something in our essence that the world did not embrace. There was some deep part of us that the world didn't jump up and down and say, oh, great, express that more fully. Be you, do you more fully. No, for whatever reasons, for all of us, because nobody can be perfectly parented. And we have our full self everybody's not going to just leap for joy when we express our greatest delight or our essence. And so that is a nature kind of a thing to the extent, or a nurture kind of a thing to the extent that we were beaten down. that there were parts of us that simply were not encouraged to express themselves. And so we had to respond to that. We had to try to figure out what's wrong with me that this isn't being embraced. How do I understand that? And what do I do instead? How do I cope with the fact that this isn't being embraced? And so what do I look, if the world isn't going to embrace this, then what do I have to do to be embraced? What do I do instead? So there's a jog that is done. There is a shift. And so we have to come up with some way of being that isn't our essence in order to be fully loved and fully embraced and to feel like we're pleasing to the world. So it definitely is some of both, but this focuses a bit more on the nurture side because it does respond to this sense of I'm expressing some core part of who I am and it's not going over very well. So now what do I do? Okay, is that
Absolutely, that's great.
okay? Chrissy.
I was with a group of people that all took the Myers-Briggs exam, and all of a sudden later on, somebody was trying to explain their behavior, and they said, I'm just expressing my penis.
Yeah, that's a really unfortunate, yeah, very unfortunate.
So is it acceptance over all or acceptance over one person?
Wait, say more, Arnell. What do you mean by that question?
Okay, when you said like, we want to feel accepted by all.
So we have
So does
this,
that mean everyone?
well, we
or
have this,
just one
I
person?
mean, all of us, as we're growing up, we need to feel that the world is a safe place. We need to feel that the world will love us and that we can receive love from the world around us. And when that doesn't happen, as we talked with Brad's class, looking at when we were looking at Erik Erikson's, the very earliest stage in human development is basically, infancy. If the caregiver to an infant does not demonstrate consistently enough that they are going to respond when that infant cries, when that infant needs comforting, when that infant needs feeding, when that infant needs to be held. If the caregiver is not consistently enough showing up, then that infant will come to believe that the world is not a safe place, that the world does not respond when we cry out. So, not saying that this is exactly like that, but the idea is that when we are young and when we are expressing ourselves, then we can, to the extent that the world isn't responding to us in the ways that we would like it to, it's not responding to who I am, then I need to figure out a way, how do I get responded to? Because I'm not going to be, I've learned that I'm not being responded to by just being me. So I have to be somebody else. I have to take on some other kind of trait or behavior because who I am is not getting what I need.
Okay,
So
well, I guess what I want to know, okay, so if you aren't getting what you need to your peers,
Okay.
but your parents,
Mhm.
you're getting what you need. I mean, so.
Yeah, and that's
So
why
it's
sometimes we're
differential.
different people in different places, right?
Right,
Sometimes I'm
that's
different
what I-
around, yeah. So it
that's what I
gets to
meant.
that core sense of what do I have to be? Who do I have to be to get what I want? So this will be clearer as we get into examples and get into our own experiences, which I really hope a lot of the class over the weeks will be for us as when you find your point, your number, and look at that maybe there might be some ways of talking about, wow, yeah, this helps me make sense of this for them. Any other questions just from this little 2-paragraph thing? But the idea really is trying to become conscious and aware. So that gives us a chance to realize we have options. Yeah, Diane.
So with my number is not my authentic self. It is a way that I've developed to kind of move through life.
Exactly.
Oh, so I was like,
Exactly.
that was me.
Now, well, it can't,
You know,
but and it can also show core strengths that you have. But it's a really great point that you're making, that to the extent that we are not living out of the wound that came from our essential self not being embraced, to the extent that we realize why we get triggered, why we get angry the way we do, why we put our energy in the directions that we do, what we are trying to compensate for because our essential self wasn't embraced. To the extent that we can learn more about that, then we are not living out of the unhealthy aspect of our number. If that makes sense. Because so at some level, people might not know, the healthier we get, the harder it might be for people to sort of say, oh, I bet you're a this. Because you're not living, just my example of I'm a 4, which I think is the most miserable number to have, just to be honest, just to be blunt. And one of the core realities of the 4 is that 4s have a very, at our sort of unhealthy side, it's very hard for 4 to enjoy the moment because we focus our energy on what's missing. So the common line of a 4 is if only. If only I had a relationship, then I would be happy. If only I hadn't moved, then I would be happy. If only ... So my energy, everything, many things could be really good in my life. But my default is to go to what's missing.
Yeah, my daughter says that's negative. Mom, stop it.
Yeah, and that isn't people can be frustrated around that energy, but it's not terribly helpful just to be told to stop it. You know, that isn't super helpful.
Yep.
So yeah, so that 4 comes out of some core things that were missing in my present as I was growing up. And so it's a really good point to make, that there are very many, each type, there's nothing, this is not a judgmental, just like the Myers-Briggs. There's nothing to sort of say, E's are bad and I's are good in the Myers-Briggs. No, not at all. And there's no attempt to be judgmental. It's not about beating up on yourself. It's help. The idea is to understand and go, oh, that's why I've always been envious of people who are content. Because before I really understood what was going on, I was not content. I was always looking at what wasn't there and thinking about how much better it would be if something were different. And so I would chase places and people and work and everything with the hope that something outside of me is going to save me, which rarely would happen. That by itself is not going to make that big of a difference. So it's a really good insight, Diane, that our number reflects what we had to do to make up for, to compensate for not being our true self, not being embraced and celebrated. So we compensated for that to survive, to try to find happiness and to make sense of the world that doesn't embrace this part of us, our full self. And at the same time, like I said, each area has tremendous strengths. Every point is needed, just like in the Myers-Briggs, every type is needed to make the world work. The world would be terribly diminished if there were no Enneagram 8s. The world would be a much poorer place. So that's the same with each Enneagram point. They're key gifts that each of us brings.
I like how you're focusing it back on us, because I'm originally thinking, now what's wrong with John? I'll find out. So I gotta look at myself.
Isn't that terrible? That mirror gets really frustrating sometimes. It's like, again, I'm looking at me.
How do you get a number?
That's what I'm talking about. I will give you something at the end of the, we actually just roll dice. And that's gonna be enough. Any other questions just about these first two paragraphs? And again, I'm just hoping that as we look at it more, it become a little less abstract.
I've been through various Enneagram things. I've never gotten it. I have suspicions about its origins and usefulness and all kinds of things. But this is some of the best description I've ever read. It had total, well, Diane's point for one, I never grasped. That's really helpful. And I had never grasped this aspect of the protecting the threat self.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah, because you'll see every time as we look at this description of the Enneagram 9, and this was just a random one that I picked, you will see, what do we try to avoid? I mean, all of us get defensive about certain things. And we get defensive about things that really threaten something that is fairly core to us. And so in some ways, the 9 is about, how do I protect myself? How do I defend something that is being threatened, that I perceive as being threatened? And this goes back early. And these aren't conscious. These are not conscious things. It's not like you're 3 years old and you're expressing your artistic side and you're being told, oh, you're painting on the walls, or you're doing this or this or that. And it's not like the 3-year-old goes, oh, I have to now try to figure out a way to get loved without showing my artistic side. No, we unconsciously make these shifts and try to navigate, because our brains are key for us to survive. Our brains will do whatever it takes to get us to survive. And so if we experience something that really feels threatening, then our brain will say, nope, not going to let you get close to that. So let's figure something else out.
Ron does that all the time.
I'm glad this is this comes out of this really, really short, tiny book called The Essential Enneagram. There are tons of books about this. This was not very well known. This was sort of primarily in Roman Catholic circles in the 70s, early 80s. It seemed like they sort of seemed, because it was my Catholic friends, when I lived in Columbus in the early 80s, it was my Catholic friends who were talking about this. I had never heard of it. The Jesuits, of course, picked up on it, and spiritual directors and some of those folks started using it. But in the last more 20, 30 years, it has really taken off, sort of with the whole movement of self-understanding, of trying to, but I think, Brad, it's very complicated. If you really want to get into the weeds, there are a lot of weeds to dive into. And it really, you don't need to go there. You can go there if you really want to explore it.
Does it work?
Does it work? All I'm going to say that will be something, and each of you might have a different experience on that. Because part of this is going to be like, once we get your type down, and I'm going to we'll hopefully have, I'll have information for you all next week after you take this little test. This is the simplest way to try to find your type that I'm aware of. There are more elaborate ones, and we'll see. I thought I was a totally different number for the first 4 years. The first time I took that class, I was a 2. And then the next time I took it, it was like, I don't think I'm a 2 anymore. So it's you live into it and you take it for what it offers, and it's not sacred that it's not scripture that you vow to.
So
You
do
know.
you change over time?
You know, the assumption of this is that you are this number. It's not like the Myers-Briggs where you can shift in different settings. Like maybe at work, when, sometimes when I've taken the Myers-Briggs, it's like, if it's for a staff, it's like, think about yourself at work doing this. Because sometimes, so my understanding of the Myers-Briggs is that it can change over time. You can be at different places on that continuum of those 4 letters.
My understanding of Myers-Briggs, from what Isabel Myers, you were typed with that from birth and it didn't change, which I think is bug, because I've seen people do
Yeah,
it different times and they
and
type out
you
differently.
type to test
So-
differently.
Right, which I think this proved, but their theory was that you were born into a predilection, which
Okay,
I think is
you had
not
set
true.
of preferences,
But
yeah.
can I ask one other?
Yeah,
No,
totally.
this is too much, but how do we accommodate the fact that you can deceive yourself about who you are?
Yes,
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I may not, I may want to over embrace certain aspects of who I am, or if I want to blame other people for who I am, or I may want to distance myself and underestimate other things. I think that's always been part of why I'm not quite, I said, don't, just go to analysis and work with a therapist.
and 10 years later, you.
Yeah, and this is a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
I mean, it's not that therapy doesn't work, it's just nobody's got the time or the money to do it.
Yeah.
well. So, I mean, is there a thought about how you?
Well, yeah,
how you
because this
calculate
is
it?
self-report, right? I mean,
Well,
I picked this, one of the things,
But
so
I'm
it's,
in bondage to sin, I cannot free
If trying to-
myself.
yeah. Well, that is where, to the extent, it just kind of like group therapy versus I can say some things to a therapist about me and about how I am,
Yeah.
but you put me in a group therapy setting, for example, and other people are triggering me, or I think aspects of my personality come out. So it might be that friends, people who know you well, can look at this, so to the extent that we might know each other fairly well here, to some extent, we can look at our types and the description of those type, and you go, boy, Diane, that just doesn't sound like you. Are you, what leads you to think that, what led you to do this? And then the extent would be that maybe then you take a little more elaborate measure. Because like I said, this just uses paragraphs. And I think they're really well done paragraphs, but they might not be enough. My mom could never find herself in this, and that told me what her number was, actually. Because she was a number that didn't want to commit itself and take sides. It wanted to be like open to all kinds of possibilities. It was like the Myers-Briggs P. If there was a number that corresponded to keeping the options open and not, yeah. But
So did
yeah,
she
so Brad,
accept that?
it has to go along with, yeah, each of us has our own blind spots, and even people we'd like to be. I might read this and go, ooh, that's me, but maybe it's you because that's who you'd really like to be, but you're not, that's not who you are, And so hopefully in a general way, we can sort of say to each other, wow, that's really interesting that this is the you that you have picked, because I see you as something else. Just a second, Rich, and then Al.
Well, one thing I've observed is that you can't really figure out, like what type another person is, because, I'm an ISTJ, I'm a Myers-Briggs, so
Okay.
I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty obvious. But that does not mean that I cannot behave in an extroverted way.
Exactly.
If I'm in a certain role,
Mhm.
I can look as extroverted as anybody.
Exactly. And we have to be able to do that to
But-
survive.
But
Right.
the
But your core
preference-
self, your preference,
The preference
right?
for me doesn't change.
Mhm. Yeah,
I just get more comfortable with my opposite letter over time.
yeah. And we have to be able to fill different roles in life, right? There are times when we have to be more extroverted, or we have to be more organized, or we have to be more open-ended, or we have to focus on tangible facts as opposed to our gut, the wisdom that we get from our gut. So, yeah, so it's like, so you hold this gently. There are always people who turn any of these personality indicators into gospel. You know, and I think the idea is, to the extent that it can be helpful for you to understand yourself and understand the dynamics of your relationships, to understand why you thrive in some areas and why other things are so hard for you, and where you find yourself continually getting stuck, to that kind of thing. And I think in relationships, as Myers-Briggs also helps you really understand, wow, no wonder we really clash in this particular area, and this kind of thing as well. Al.
Oh, it's just somewhat humorous comment. As a, not just a pastor, but a career counselor too, I had a whole decade where I did a lot of work with secular clients who were looking for a new career field mid-career because something had fallen apart. And I also found myself called by the church to work with seminary students on the candidacy committee. I long ago lost track of how often I've done the Myers-Briggs with people. My colleagues and I developed a preference, even though we were working with the individual, that when we presented the results from the Myers-Briggs, we'd invite the partner or spouse to come in.
Yes.
Yeah, and I cannot tell you how often we'd be laying out, well, this is your Myers-Briggs type, and the person would be going, oh, no, no, no. And the partner and spouse would go, oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It happened over.
And that speaks to Brad's point really well, that sometimes somebody else can be that mirror for us to go. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so that very important role, if we all can delude ourselves, you know, we don't have a clear picture. We look in a mirror darkly, right? And sometimes we don't want to acknowledge. And what some people say on the Enneagram, when I talked about the 4 being the most miserable number possible, is that sometimes if you read a description, the description you respond most negatively to could be the one that is yours, because you're seeing this and you're going, ooh, ooh. So let's flip the page, and there are 2 options that, for some reason, when I couldn't get the big one to copy on a smaller scale. So the second page has the type 9 and much bigger than on the back of the first page. So it's the same kind of a thing. But this hopefully, as we look at these categories, again, this comes out of the Essential Enneagram, which I found this to be the most basic, helpful of the different books I've looked at. Just to kind of give you a sense, and they do this with each number. And when I get back from you the results of the test that I'm going to send home with you, when you tell me the letters, I don't tell you which letter corresponds to which number, because I don't really necessarily want you to, if you have any experience with this, if you say, okay, I'm a 3, so I'm going to test myself as a 3, I want to just have you find what's the truest for you, and then next week I will have information of you for the type that you have labeled as you.
So we take these tests.
I give you these home,
to
and
you?
then you let me know. You can phone me, email me to sort of say, if there's one that says absolutely clear, then all you have to do is say Dave A, paragraph A. If you go, Dave, there were like two or three that really I resonated with, then you tell me that this has a label for first and second, third choice. It gives you instructions on how to do this,
Okay.
and then to do it, and then to get this information back to me before next, ideally by Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, so this will tell you, just sort of what we were just trying to talk about on a more abstract level. The fundamental, so number 9, and every author has a different description of what the type is. There's not a uniform way of saying, so this author says that 9 is the mediator. And that's a sort of a common one. This one says 9 is the peacemaker. This one says 9 is the diplomat. So luckily, hopefully they're not super different. They're relation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the fundamental principle I lost sight of. Everyone belongs equally in a state of unconditional love and union. So that we are all loved in the same way, we all belong in the same way. That is not how the world responded to me. So what I came to believe instead, so this is what we compensate. The core essence was we are all unconditionally loved. That didn't happen. What I came to believe instead, the world treats people as unimportant for what they are and requires them to blend in as the way to experience a sense of comfort and belonging. So I can't be the individual me. I can't stand out. So I have to be a chameleon in some way. I have to blend in. To experience a sense of comfort and belonging. So again, comfort and belonging being two core needs for all of us, but the 9 in particular, okay? The strategy I developed to cope with this belief. So this is what they had to come up with because their unique self was not embraced. I learned to forget myself and merge with others. I substituted inessentials and small comforts for real priorities. So 9s will not be people who draw attention to themselves. They will not be the ones who dress in a way that makes them stand out from everybody else. 9s will not be the ones who are usually the first person in a class to raise their hand, the first day of school, to sit in a class and the teacher asks a question. The 9 will most likely not be the first person to raise their hand because they have to get the lay of the land. It's really important to say, what is safe here? What's tolerated? What can I get away with? And so the 9s and the 5s would also probably do that as well. The Enneagram 5 also would be the ones who are they sort of look around. They observe before diving in. And again, all of these, this would speak to all of us in some way, right? None of us was unconditionally loved, right? But we respond to that in some different ways. And so for the 9, you have to blend in. And you are not important just for who you are. The world treats people as unimportant for what they are, requires them to blend in. And so the way the 9 responds to that is merging with others. So then the principal characteristics of the 9. Because of this strategy, because I learned to forget myself and merge with others, and I substituted inessentials and small comforts for real priorities, then my attention is focused on other people's, bless you, other people's agendas, requests, and demands. All the things in the environment that affect them. So they are not saying, hey, this is what is important to me. They are much more say, what's important to you? What matters to you? What do you want? What do you need?
That's what a 9 says.
So a 9, that's sort of their end. So what they put their attention, they focus their attention on, because what they said, they learn to forget about themselves and merge with others. So if I forget about myself, if that's what I learn I need to do, because if I insist on myself, then I'm just going to get crap in return. I'm going to get made fun of, I'm going to get mocked, I'm going to get whatever. So to get along in the environment, I forget about myself and I focus on you. I make your needs most important. So was there a hand? Yeah,
This just sounds like codependent type,
well,
but maybe more than, but those things about, you know, I learned to forget myself, passive aggressive, dealing with anger, this seem like classic
that,
codependency, but there's more to it than that.
there's more to it than that, and yeah. And I don't know if there's ever, and I don't know if there have been many studies done in terms of looking at Enneagram type along with other kinds of sort of mental health challenges. You know, is one type number more prominent in narcissism or in some of these behaviors in like say codependency.
I mean, codependency isn't a personality disorder, but
No,
you can have a
no.
narcissistic personality.
Exactly.
Personality disorders as
right.
opposed to just carrying.
Yeah, but the codependent, I would not be at all surprised that someone who has codependent tendencies where it's like, I exist because of you.
Yeah.
In a sense, I need you to, that nines might be more disproportionately present among those who deal with codependency.
Well, when we're learning, will we learn, okay, a 9 would be best partnered with a 6?
Yeah, we're not really going, because the whole goal in this is to try to
Find yourself.
unlearn. Yeah, it's self-understanding, but it's to try to realize, okay, this is why, I mean, the goal for a 9 is to try to come to believe that you have every right to assert your needs.
So then I might
desires.
find out, well, I'm a 10 and Tom's a 9 and 9 don't work for me.
Yeah, no, it's really that there's some areas that they're certainly more, that it's harder. But the idea is, again, that you can compensate for this. You can change some of your default settings, your reflex responses by realizing, okay, that's why I'm doing this. So I can do it differently.
Okay.
Yeah. I put my energy into being sensitive to others and trying to please them, keeping life comfortable and familiar, maintaining structure and routine so that life will be predictable, maintaining peace and quiet, containing anger, doing the less essential and comforting activities rather than the more important and more disturbing ones. So again, because this person has come to believe that you don't want to stand out. When I assert myself, I get in trouble. It's important to blend in, be a team player. Then I look to being aware of the needs of others and trying to please them. Those who just are so, you go into some people's houses and it's always comfortable. And they are really gracious. They are incredibly hospitable. They just help you feel at ease and at peace when you're around them. People who don't trust a lot of spontaneity and change, but who like life to be somewhat predictable. Comfort and belonging, as it said, what I came to believe instead, the importance of having a sense of comfort and belonging. Not letting anger come out, because that draws attention to that is not safe. Because I need to forget myself, so I don't deserve in some level to be that angry, because I can't make this about me. So I swallow it. So that's what a 9 will focus their energy on. Those, and which are all lovely things. Being sensitive to others' needs, trying to please people, keeping what it, to an extent. The problem is when any of this gets too extreme, losing yourself, coming to never to assert yourself or stand up for yourself or say, I need this. That is not a healthy way to live. I do everything I can to avoid conflict, confrontation, feeling uncomfortable. Too many competing demands on my attention and energy. My strengths: attentiveness to others, empathy, supportiveness, accountability, steadfastness, being adaptive, being accepting, being receptive, being caring. Again, this is where we get to the idea that each of these types has extraordinary strengths. And these people are incredible blessed. Each of us is an incredible blessing. Because who does not, what would the world be like if we didn't have these qualities? The challenge comes when that becomes, when we also realize that there are other, our fears are keeping us from having other needs met. And from having empathy toward ourselves, for example, as opposed to empathy going outwardly. So any questions or observations just about that? And again, this is simplified, but it's really simply trying to get a sense of sort of some of the basic characteristics of the mediator, of the nine.
Dave, is what you brought off here, pages 54, 55, is that from the David Daniels?
That is from, exactly, yes.
Daniels book?
That is out of this David Daniels book, exactly. And that's the bibliographical citation from the quote you read on the first page. Yes, exactly. So any other, yeah.
I was just gonna say, just reading through this right now, it's funny because I'm curious, kind of like Brad was referring to, that I'm curious to take it now because I feel like, oh, I see parts of that. Oh yeah, that's me. And then other, that's not me.
Right.
You know, and so I'm very curious to see how this plays out.
That's what really helps you when you look at the different descriptors. And we will go through, we will look at each number. Especially as we look at people at what our sort of our group, what the group looks like in terms of individual numbers. But yeah, you will find, rarely would somebody find absolutely nothing they have in common with one of the descriptions. But, and when you're reading this, it's important, and I think the descriptions say this, you know, it's important to go, if you read the paragraph, and overall you're going, wow, this is really me. But there's one or two sentences, not so much. It's nothing's ever going to be 100%. It's when you go get more into the detail of reading a description like this, where it's clear, like, this, yes, I look at this more, no, I cannot, this really is not who I am. Or you're going like, wow. And that's the amazing, the miracle of something like a really good personality type indicator. And the first time I read my Myers-Briggs description, it was like, how do they know? You know? And you look at this and it's like, how can the entire population of the world be divided into 9 points? And I don't know. But it's kind of amazing to me that when I read this thing, it's like, wow, that's just remarkable. We're not as complex as sometimes we think we are. But yeah, so don't, when you read this and try to type yourself, don't, yeah, if one or two parts of it you say no to, don't let that lead you to dismiss it.
So this is making me think, I can think back and realize early on somewhere, I think, I forget 9, I just had 2 types. You were either a schmuck or you were a saint. I mean, and so I read 9, and then, you know, I learned over time that no, the saints have faults and the schmucks, oh, that's pretty interesting stuff. Which I'm pretty sure would say something about my type, that for some reason I need to just subdivide, you know, either or.
Paragraph A, the first sentence. I approach things in an all or nothing manner, especially issues that matter to me. Yeah, that it's a beautiful description of what's our way of, you just sort of default way of looking at the world. When we look at the world, we try to define, make sense of it, make sense of people. Yeah, we all have these filters that we see the world through.
And that's a great way to cope too.
It's a,
I mean,
yeah.
It's just like you're either okay or you're not okay.
Mhm. Yeah, right, wrong, good, bad, what's
And
this
that'd be worse, I
gray?
mean,
What
other
is, the yeah,
That's,
yeah.
you know, when you're looking at the world, you're either, oh, I can be around these people, they're
Mhm.
okay. Or I can't be around those people for whatever.
Yeah, I mean, ways to cope, there are ways that we, yeah. So, under stress and anger, what causes me stress? Taking a position, saying no to someone and having that person get angry, having to make timely decisions and set priorities, dealing with a commitment I made that I didn't really want to make. Again, if we go back to the basic proposition, I learned to forget myself and merged with others. I substituted inessentials and small comforts for real priorities. The world treats people as unimportant for what they are, requires them to blend in. So you sort of look at taking a position, you're not blending in, saying no to someone and having that person angry, you're not blending in. Having to make a timely decision, so I can't get the lay of the land and sort of weigh and say, how is it safe? How is it safe for me to say yes or no? Because someone's going to be upset with me. I can't please everybody. And then, yeah, saying yes to something and going, why did I do that? I don't even care about this. What makes me angry? Being treated as not important. Feeling controlled by others, being forced to face conflict. So again, when you look back under the basic proposition on the left side, what I came to believe instead, you wanted to believe that everybody was unconditionally loved. So everybody's important. And you learned the world treats people as unimportant. And so it makes you angry to be treated as not important because that core part of you was saying, I need to feel important. And you learned that that's not how the world works. And it still pisses you off. Feeling controlled by others. And of course, if you are deferring to everybody's agenda, then of course, you're going to feel like under the control of others because people get used to, hey, people will love you if you're always looking out for their needs, right? So people seek you out to take care of them, to help them, to do this or that.
For them to boss you around.
Yeah, you feel that way.
Yeah.
And again, being forced to face conflict because again, you're in a no-win situation because you can't please everybody.
Yep.
The nature of my anger, passive aggression, manifested as stubbornness or resistance, occasionally boiling over and exploding when it just gets to be too much. But otherwise passive aggressive, just not making a decision, not responding, not saying this is where I stand. Martin Luther was not a 9. A 9 would not say here I stand unless they're a really, really healed 9.
And I was thinking Harry Truman.
Harry Truman.
The buck stops
The buck
here.
stops here. Exactly. Not a 9. Absolutely not 9 behavior. Personal development, which I think sometimes is a really helpful thing because this really helps you see how do I heal from how I've learned to cope. The ultimate goal of my development is to realize that we all are unconditionally and equally loved, accepted and appreciated for who we are as individuals, that our worth and well-being come from within. So I do not rely on those outside of me to tell me I am lovable or loved. But that I realize that even if the world doesn't treat me like that, that doesn't change the reality that all of us are loved.
And it's a hard thing to, oh my God, my mind. To realize and put into an act.
Yeah, because we have
into
plenty
your
of
life.
evidence that we're not loved, right?
Correct, correct.
And again, giving that to ourselves.
And it's hard.
One thing
to
about
give
this
to
is that
yourself.
is not to look externally so much for what we need to know and trust and believe. Is that we give ourselves that. We look to faith for that. We look to some. But to be able to really believe that we are loved, we are accepted and appreciated, even if my world isn't telling me that. And that is incredibly hard. But that's the secret of any kind of development, is not relying on externals to validate you or to tell you that you're worth something. To let that message come from within. How I can further my personal development. Pay attention to my own needs and well-being. Use anger as a signal of feeling discounted and remind myself that I really do matter. Notice feelings I may be blocking out when I turn from my real priorities to substitutes, such as TV, food, errands, or chores. Remember, under the basic proposition for the 9, the strategy I developed to cope with believing that the world does not treat people as important is that I substituted in essentials and small comforts for real priorities. So we all find ways to distract ourselves. We all find ways to deal when we're stressed. And this one says, notice when you find yourself choosing to escape, to notice was there a feeling that was coming up that I'm trying to escape from? Because if I let myself name that, then I could realize, okay, why is this so threatening to me? If I was starting to feel anger toward somebody and I immediately go to some escape, then the invitation that can further your development is to let yourself sit with that anger and say, why am I so angry and why am I afraid of it?
And what do you do with it?
Well, how do I respond? How do I respond to it? But there are some feelings that we just have learned are toxic, and almost any time that feeling comes up, we will try to escape it.
Go get a bag of chips.
That's the one. Notice another thing that furthers the personal development of a 9. Notice when my prolonged ruminating keeps me from setting priorities and taking action on them. Accept discomfort and change as a natural part of life. Practice loving myself as well as I love others. Drusan, did you say something or you?
Talking to myself.
Oh, okay, good. What hinders my personal development? Feeling that I don't count, feeling that I don't deserve to pursue my own agenda, giving everything equal importance and consequently missing my real priorities, avoiding the discomfort and disruption required for change. How others can support my development. Encourage me to express my own position. Ask me what I want and what is good for me, and give me time to figure out the answer. Support me when I act responsibly toward myself. Allow me to acknowledge my anger. Encourage me to set and keep my own boundaries, limits, and priorities. So any responses to, yeah. Yeah.
You chose the correct 9, just briefly, what's a name for the other 8 types?
The names for the other 8 types, since we're using this person's naming of 9, I will use that person's naming for 1 through 9. The perfectionist,
Oh, dear.
the giver,
Mm.
the performer, the romantic, the observer, the loyal skeptic, the epicure, the protector are the other 8 names. Don't get hung up on the titles. Like I said, just to give an example, this person names the 9, the visionary, the visionary, the connector, the luminary, the artist, the philosopher, the advocate, the explorer, the warrior, the diplomat.
That's so much more positive.
Yeah. This is the more recent one. This was 2021. Our closing quote is from this book. Yeah.
I was just Googling around here to try to get up to speed, found another site with different names. Also a site that there is each type under stress
Goes to a different.
corresponds to personality disorders. So so that like the type 1, whatever you call that, reformer or whatever, under stress can become obsessive compulsive.
Huh.
And
Wow. I have never
the
seen
type-
that direct a link.
The type 3, the kind of achieving whatever under stress will become grandiose and narcissistic. So, but that's revealing to me that any type, when stressed, you get pushed out of shape and you become more like.
Yeah, and one of the theories that's interesting, the theory also has that under stress, you will go to another number and draw from that. And when things are going really well, you will also go to another number, which is what makes this so complicated, because you have 2 other numbers that are attached under stress and when things are going well. But then you also have what's called a wing, which is the number on either side of you. So there are 3 other numbers that you have relationships with in addition to your primary point. And so that is just, and then some people say, well, under stress, you can go to 1, but also you can gain strengths from that. Yeah. But I've never seen the one that ties it to a particular mental illness.
We all got it.
Well, I would say personality.
Personality disorder, yeah. So each one is to like, so you have
I think the problem with personality disorder, like there's nothing at the other end of the spectrum to say, if you're at the extreme, you're disordered, then what is well-ordered look like?
Yes, exactly.
And there's some stuff on this website about you're kind of more like this or that, but it's not as definitive as the disorder labeling.
Right, yeah. Boy, so there's some disorders. Yeah, Al.
And having some fun with this again and bouncing off of you, Brad. In terms of spirituality, there's another matrix that matches each one of these up with the 7 deadly sins. Plus 2.
Yes.
Well, there were 8 deficits, so.
Well, then the 8th one is there, but then there's also a 9th one.
No, it's really true. Yeah,
That's the people
yeah,
that believe
they
it.
do
There
that
is
as well.
another- There is another typology.
Yeah, I have some information on that.
Yeah, basically, yeah, what you've said so far
And that's just
makes
too
me
funny,
think I'm
based on
glad
the
that we've
presentation.
done it after the 7 deadly sins, because I can see where at
Yeah.
the point in your development where you didn't get enough of something balanced, whatever, that
Yeah.
can send you off in one of these
Right.
directions.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I know envy is the one for the 4. Because everybody else has it so much better. Everybody else has it together. They all got what they need. They all, none of them is missing anything. It's just poor sloth that I am. Any other responses to this before we just read the closing quote that I hope will be helpful as we look at this? Anything else from just what we looked at? I hope that makes it a little clearer about sort of what this is about, because each point will then have this information offered about, false beliefs, how you responded to that, stress, anger, what's helpful. So if someone want to read on the back of the first page, underneath the tiny print 9, does someone want to read that? And that is from this book called Enneagram and Power.
The goal of the Enneagram is to help you find acceptance for who you are and freedom to become much more. Through the Enneagram, you will find valid and illuminating reasons behind your unhelpful patterns of thinking, feeling, and acting. You might say, aha, that's why I respond to fear the ways I do. Or, before, I never understood why I got so angry when I came across injustice. This recognition and self-awareness will, hopefully, enable you to have more compassion for yourself in those circumstances. But learning about your personality's natural tendencies is not an excuse to continue in behavioral patterns that are unhelpful or harmful to you or other people. Instead, learning about these patterns is an invitation for you to get space and freedom from them, to wriggle free from the rigidity of what you have always done and find new flexibility to make new and different choices. The Enneagram will help you to understand why you act the way you do. The goal is that you let this empower you to stretch, take small steps out of your comfort zone, and grow into a better person than you were yesterday.
Okay. Any closing comments from anyone? Okay, so I want to take one of these and pass it around and let me know if I have enough, because everybody should have one. I made 18 copies.
Now, what is this free?
Myers-Briggs is it's a totally other different type of personality test. It's just one of a number of things that help you sort of understand yourself and how you react in the world. So this should, hopefully the directions of this are fairly straightforward. If you could, between now and Thursday.
How many more? 3 more?
Oh, we need 3 more? Okay. Several people can follow me to the copy room. So if you have a couple people follow, well, copy room. So yeah, read through this. Well, hopefully if there's one that really rings true, but if there are a couple that ring fairly true, pick those, and then on the left side it says first choice, second, third choice, just circle those. And send me an email or call me to let me know, text me to say what your first, second, or third choices are if you needed a third choice. And then I will have, by next week, I will have descriptions for all of your types. Okay? So who needs to follow me to the library, to the copy room?
I do, and I think Katie just came in and stuff.
Okay.
When you come around back again, yes, when he said people were really well balanced.
Are you getting up or
No,
not? Because I
yes.
can't get up to you.
It's hard to balance, where if you're really well balanced, I think like Ruth and Carol.
Dave, I'm sorry, I won't be here.
Oh, yeah.
But I hope you'll
Yes.
send me my whatever.
I will, yeah, let me know when you
Talk
I hope so.
We might video and next week. I'm
Okay.
not sure.
That'd be great. Well, yeah. Nice to see you.
This is picture. Yeah. And now, why was that? Yeah, I like to. I like to think, okay, here's the.
This one we all did.
Yeah, how you might work.